Good morning, everyone. Happy Monday. I'm back for the Apex Live Challenge. This is episode number 2, going over the 7 areas of your life, much like we teach in my Smart Women series group that I co-founded with my gals I mentioned yesterday. Anyway, today I thought I would talk a little bit about finance. I do work as a mortgage loan officer, and one of the biggest things that I see confuses people hands down is credit, understanding the basics of credit. It's not a great sexy topic, but I think it'll give you some tips that might be helpful. Hopefully it does. So we'll talk about that a little bit today. First of all, I think I would tell you, and this may be something you already know, but the range for your credit score, which is basically your financial report card, is 300 to 850. That's the number range. If you're at 720 and above, that's good. You're a pretty low risk. That's a good credit score. If you are under 620, not so great. That's not good. And there's obviously some room in between there. But let's talk about, why do we care? Why do we even care what our FICO is? Like, what's the big deal? So I would tell you that maybe you know that when you apply for a mortgage, obviously the better your score, the better rate you're going to qualify for. So that's one thing. It works the same way when you buy an automobile and get a loan for that. It works the same way when you apply for credit cards. But what you may not know is it even affects the cost you will pay for your car insurance, things like that. So your credit report card is actually pretty big. It can have a lot of financial impact, because you figure if you're paying your bill, all your bills every month, you write out a house payment bill, you write out your car bill, you write out all your credit cards. If you're paying more on each one of those, that's going to add up, and you're going to have a big impact on your finances. And another way I like to explain it to people that might make more sense to you is, if you take 2 people, you and another person, let's say your credit is the one at 640 and they're at a 720. So you could be buying the same house, the same car, opening the same credit card accounts, paying for the same policy of auto insurance, and you're going to be paying way more for those exact same items as this guy, just because of that FICO score. So it is very important, and it does affect you every month. So it's worthwhile to understand how to fix that. There's 3 credit bureaus, you may already be familiar: Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. May or may not be important to you, but what they do is they each report on your credit behavior as you spend and go. And interestingly, even though they're all watching your same behavior, your scores for all 3 will most often not be the same. Rarely do I see the same scores for all 3 bureaus. For instance, when we pull your credit for a mortgage, we pull all 3 and we take the middle score. So if you are applying with a mate, a partner, a spouse, we also pull their credit, of course, and then we take the lower middle score between the 2 of you. And rarely does your credit and your mate's credit match up exactly as well. So just food for thought. So how do they come up with your FICO score? I thought that might be kind of funny to explain to you a little bit about. Now, keep in mind, I am no all-time expert on credit ever. This is just the stuff that I deal with and see. And I like to at least make people aware of some of the basics. There's 5 parts that make up your FICO. So the payment history, which is a pretty big chunk, it's 35%. And that's obviously, are you paying on time every time? And we'll talk more about that. The amounts you owe on your credit, and the magic number for, let's say, credit cards is 30% or below is going to be in your favor. So if you have a credit card with a $1,000 limit and you owe $500 on the card, you're at a 50% ratio. That's not as favorable. That's considered a little higher risk. If you keep it at 30, which would be 300 in that case or less, you are a much better risk. So they prefer that. The length of your credit history is also important. And as you might imagine, logically, longer is better. So there's that. And then interestingly, and that's 15%, just so you know. Types of credit is only 10%, but this is kind of a funny one. They actually like a variety of credit. They want you to have, it looks better if you have some mortgage, some auto, some credit cards. Interestingly, that's favorable. New credit is the last one for the final 10%. And what I always think back to is back in the day when we actually went shopping at stores, and it wasn't just online, even though this happens online too. I can remember shopping with my girlfriends. You'd go into a store, you'd find great clothes you want, you'd go to checkout and they'd say, hey, if you open a credit card from our store, we're going to give you 10% off of your purchase today. Wow, that sounds like a great deal. Why wouldn't I? 10% for free just for signing up? Okay. So you do that, and that's fine. Then you keep shopping, because in those days you'd hit them all and you'd go from store to store. So maybe you're in another store and you find some great jeans and another shirt, and you go and you pay for those. When you get up to the register, they say the same thing. Hey, if you open a card from our store, we're going to give you 10-15% off on your purchase today. And again, that sounds pretty enticing. I think, oh, why wouldn't I? So you do it again. Now that's kind of a no-no to have a lot of credit opened in a short period of time. And a lot of credit, being variable. But you don't want to be opening up credit card after credit card, days in a row. That just makes you look like a high-risk person. You're kind of out of control. You're spending and you're opening a lot of credit cards, so they don't like that. So if I were to go back to just tips that you can work on, and keep in mind, I understand we're going through a hard time. A lot of people are having financial problems. They've lost their jobs. So you may not be in a position to do some of these things right now, but maybe when you are back on track and you get your job and things are kind of back to normal, or you have a better situation with your income, you'll be aware of, these are things I can do to go back and start putting in place to improve my credit, because overall it's going to save me money. I want people to understand that. So the first thing I would tell you is the obvious one we talked about. Pay your bills on time every time. When you look at that credit card statement and there's a date on there, that is the date they want the money to be to them paid. And if you are late, they ding you. They do ding you. You definitely don't want to be late on a mortgage payment if you can help it. That's a pretty heavy one. And forbearance is a whole different subject, so I'm not going into that today. But typically, a late payment on your house payment, not great. But we'll get back to credit cards. So let's say you've had a really, really good history with this credit card company, always paid on time, paid your payment, at least the minimum or preferably more. And you go on vacation, you get distracted, and you forget, and you come back, and you're like, oh my God, I totally forgot to make that. If you do that, sometimes you can call the creditor, the company, and say, you can see from my record, I'm very consistent and I always paid on time. This one time I had a little slip up, is there any way you could remove that? And oftentimes they will if you have a good record. So then they remove whatever the late fee is, and then they also hopefully will, remove the reporting of it. You can't get away with that all the time. You can't do it over and over. But if that happens to you, that is worth a phone call. The second thing I would tell you is set up automatic payments. Most companies are happy to do automatic payments because they know they'll get their money on time if they have access to pulling it just directly from you. And sometimes they will even offer you a discount on the payment amount if you sign up for automatic. That just takes the worry out of it, and you don't have to worry about, did I hit the date? Did I miss it by 3 days? It's done. The next thing I would tell you is about carrying the balance. Remember the 30% rule? Be kind of cognizant of how much of your credit limit you are carrying on those cards. And if you have several, and some are lower and some are pretty high balances, work on paying off the high balance ones first. You're always shooting for that 30% or less. So if you have some that aren't as bad and one that's up at 80%, start working on that guy. Pay him down so you can get your overall percentage down. That will help you. Also, this is kind of a different one that I didn't know back in the day. If you have a long-standing card, you've paid it off, you're not using it, it's just sitting there on your list, and you think, well, I'm just going to clean up, my whole credit list. I'm going to just close that card out. I don't even need it on there. It's actually not going to help you. It's going to hurt you, because remember the rule about longer is better. So if this is one of your longest standing cards and you choose to take it off of there, now you've just decreased your credit term as far as how long you've had credit. One of your longest ones is gone. So sometimes from inactivity, they will close it for you. So you can even do a tiny charge along the way here and there to keep it at least open. But that's actually a plus for your report. So that's one thing. And then again, not opening a bunch of accounts in a short period of time. You know, you don't want to do that. So just be cognizant of that. And we already talked about paying down the highest card first. So you also are entitled to one free credit report a year from each of those bureaus I mentioned. They don't charge you for it, and the website is annualcreditreport.com. So if you want to go on just to see where you stand and put a plan in action, I hope that helps you. I know it's not a crazy fun subject, but I think those tips might be of use, and I hope somebody can improve their credit and at least keep that in mind. Be mindful of what you're doing when you're spending and paying on your bills. And tomorrow we will talk about another subject I think you'll find really interesting. So thank you for watching. Join me in the morning. See you later. Bye.